So you're in New Hampshire, right? Is that where?
Yeah, southern New Hampshire. I've been up here in the woods for about 22 years. I grew up in St. Louis, if you didn't notice.
Yeah, I think you told me. I think you told me that.
Yeah.
When we
So
were chatting. So
yeah, so I've been up here for a while, and now I live in my little closet here and just talk at myself in the microphone all day. So,
so how'd you get into audiobook narration? Did you do like voiceover work or something before that? And
I've been doing voiceover work for 5 or 6 years before that. I have a marketing company that I own that takes the majority of my time. And started doing some voiceover work here and there. I did a couple of radio commercials, TV commercial for a boat dealer up here, a couple other things like that. But I've always been into books, so I started doing some some quick auditions for audiobooks, and I harassed a couple of authors, and I think you were one of them. But harassed an author who I had read his whole series 3 or 4 years ago, and he was kind enough to allow me to butcher his first the first couple of books in his series, and then I got better as I went through. So, but that's how I got into it, and I enjoy doing it. I'm a lot better at it now than I was. I've been taking some acting classes and things like that to kind of get the character voices and personalities kind of more established, so everybody doesn't sound the same and some of that stuff. So, but yeah, it's fun.
that's cool. So how do you keep track of like the different voices and stuff? You have to make a soundboard to remind yourself who's supposed to sound like what, or
I have a little folder, and I usually ask the people, the authors, like, hey, if you were to cast this character, what actor would he be? And some have been helpful. Some just say, yeah, do whatever. So I have a little folder that I keep all the different character, like I have a psycho character, a couple other weirdos that you can kind of draw back to based on the different people in the books. But when I'm doing it, it takes a couple of weeks to kind of say out loud a full 300 or 400 page book. So
yeah.
I'm having to go back to that folder and listen to little sound snips of each character for a few seconds beforehand. That way I don't mess it up too much. But I kind of regurgitate the same 15 to 20 different voices for different books. Like I might have, like Michael in your book is a female in another book, same attitude, just a little bit of a different voice. They're kind of a similar type character, more like the hardcore military person who, so yeah, that's how I do that. But it wasn't like that at first. I was, the first book or two were just atrocious, and I was actually listening to one the other day just to kind of compare, and I sent a note to the author. I was like, listen, at some point in the next year, I'm going to redo this whole first book because this is terrible. So, yeah. But I would imagine that's the same when you're writing. You probably look back, a year later and say, oh, I bet I could have done that differently or something like that, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I've done, that's part of the editing process, and then also, having the book being finished, and then, go through and do self-editing and stuff, and like, okay, this finally sounds right. This sounds like dialogue, and then when I hear it out loud, I'm like, oh, I probably could have. He read that awesome, but I really could have wrote that line better.
Right. When you're doing that, do you have a group of like friends or advanced like beta readers that go through it and say, hey, this is cool, this sucks, this is great?
Yeah, I had 3 friends that I sent copies to. I just sent them the Word document, and 2 of them are just fans of the genre, zombie books, and one of them he doesn't like zombie books at all, but he's a professor at Bradley University down in Peoria, Illinois.
Okay. Yeah.
And he took his copy, he read it, and he basically just did a grammar check.
You'd be surprised. I don't do every book I get in front of me. Like I'll do an audition sometimes, and they'll approve it, and they'll send me the manuscript, and I'll start reading through it. And sometimes in the first 5 or 10 pages, I'm just like, yeah, maybe you could send me the full completed manuscript, not the one you did like, pre-edits, because the grammar's out of place, or it's just not, you can tell what they're trying to get at, but it just didn't quite work, so,
Yeah.
so there's some of that with narration too. You don't want to, say, read a finished product when it's not really a finished product, because it doesn't do, doesn't help me as far as growing my portfolio. It also doesn't help the author, because people hear the audiobook, then they maybe go read the book, or vice versa.
Right.
And when they start getting all kinds of negative reviews about, poor grammar, because people are, as you know, people suck, so they complain about the weirdest things, but they'll go online and put some review up on Amazon. Hey, like, I love the book, but good grief, the grammar was atrocious, and stuff like that. So it's always good to kind of get the finished product or have somebody run through it. So you were lucky you had an actual professor do that. That was maybe for free.
Yeah.
That's even better.
When I first started getting reviews, there was actually, because I had gone through it so many times and had so many people look at it, and then I first started getting reviews on the print version.
Yeah.
I was getting a bunch of comments about grammar and spelling errors, and I had to go back through and look. And what I ended up doing was, I had gone back through and I had a fully finished edited product, and I had still the last version on my laptop, on the desktop. I had the last version that hadn't been corrected yet. I had them right next to each other, and I deleted the wrong one and ended up submitting the unfinished to Amazon for publication. So what I had to do was I had to pull it down off of the site, and then I had to spend 2 weeks going back through it again, and
geez,
whole thing, and then submit it. And since I did that, I haven't had any complaints. But
do they print on demand? Does Amazon print on demand?
Yeah, that's Amazon is your book. Somebody orders a paperback, it doesn't exist until about 2 days after it gets ordered.
No kidding. Huh.
Yeah, whatever setup they've got going for their printing shops is.
Well, that's good, because in that case you didn't have like cases of them sitting around that were mistyped. So
right. Yeah, but I had I don't know how many people had ebooks, but there's at least 50 paperbacks out there running around that
right.
Out of 400 pages.
It might be worth money someday. You never know.
Yeah, but there's
books autographed.
With three.
What got you into the genre, into the zombie or military fiction?
Zombies. I first saw the original Night of the Living Dead in black and white when I was 10 or 12 years old, and it was mildly traumatic, but it kind of stuck with me, and I've just been huge fan. I've been a huge fan of the zombie genre ever since then. And as far as having military characters, I didn't want to go with a military fiction type. I didn't want like an Arisen type military series. But I had 20 years in the military, and I had some really good friends in the military. And most of the main characters are actually the actual real names, and the characters are based on guys that I'm still
no kidding.
from the Army. Yeah.
That's cool. Did you serve overseas?
Yeah. I did Iraq and Afghanistan both in 2007 and 2011. And way back when, in 1999, I did a peacekeeping mission in Bosnia. So.
Oh, wow.
So.
Well, thanks for that.
Got to see a little bit of the world. Welcome.
There you go. And so what started you off on writing the After Z book?
Well, I kind of had gotten frustrated a few times over reading stories that I thought were good. Like, man, I wish the author would have wrote this in. I really want to know what happened with this character. But I never really seriously considered the book. But then I started getting into watching. There was a show, Doomsday Preppers, on that was on the History Channel, and I really was big into that show. And that was when about the time that Powerball hit that first record Powerball jackpot.
Yeah, right.
$1.5 billion.
Right.
And I started, being a truck driver, I got hours and hours going down the road to daydream and spend that money in my head, and that's what my imaginary money on, was building what became the bunker in After Z.
Right.
And
it's pretty much you're Ryan Maxwell, and everybody else around you are the people. Makes sense, and that's what you would
Yeah.
$1.5 billion. Perfect.
But and I told my wife one night, I came home off the road. I said, you know what? I said I've kind of been making notes and just running through imaginary scenarios in my head.
Mhm.
I can write a book, and I was expecting her to, to kind of laugh or poo-poo it at first, and she was
Yeah,
real supportive right off the bat. She's like, "Well, go ahead."
that's good.
So I started on it, and it took me almost 3 years to finish it. Just
Oh,
because
wow.
I didn't take it real serious at first. I just kind of piddled around with it here and there, and then
Right.
about the last 6 or 8 months before it got done is when I finished probably the last 2/3 of it.
So it kind of went quick at the end then.
Yeah, once I really got serious, and I hit about, well, the book's 120,000 words, 126. Once I hit
Yeah.
about 50,000 words, I'm like, I really have enough here to finish this book. I might as well.
That's good.
And then I
Had you done had you done writing previously, or was it just kind of all was brand new to you?
not a word.
That's awesome.
As far as creative writing or anything, any kind of fiction writing,
Right.
on essays for school and stuff like that. But yeah, never
Yeah.
anything as an actual,
You
story.
brought up you brought up Arisen a few minutes ago. I think that's one of the best zombie series, like whole encompass series I've read. Have you read the whole thing?
Yeah, the brand new book that's out, the Raiders, the standalone.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet either.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for Bray to finish that one up.
Audio, right?
So
Yeah.
I can listen to that one.
Well, that's good. Did you have other authors in the genre that you kind of followed, previously, or that you've learned of recently?
Probably the biggest zombie author that I was into before I started reading was Mayberry, Jonathan Mayberry, with the Rotten Ruin series, and a couple of his Joe Ledger books have a zombie virus in it, but yeah, him, and then Mark Tufo's books I got into, and then once I stumbled across the Arisen series, I pretty much went start to finish on those.
Yeah.
Without ever ordering another audiobook.
I did like 14 in a row over the course of 2 months. It was great. I was like, all right, kids, go to bed. I got to go turn this.
Yeah, that was
a good story.
The only thing I used my Audible credits on for
exactly.
But
when I read After Z, one of the things I liked the most about it was, before I reached out to you, was how it was a different formula than 99%, maybe 98% of the rest of the genre. It's always an outbreak happens, and then you learn about the characters either as it's happening, or you meet them in it, and then you go back to them previously in like a flashback. Yours was pretty cool, where the zombies are just kind of hanging out. They're just out there. We already know about it. We just got to deal with them here and there. And I thought that was an interesting formula. Did that just kind of was that based on something that you had maybe seen before, or was that just
the flashback?
How did that evolve, I guess?
Yeah, the little interlude chapters of the flashbacks was Jonathan Mayberry does a lot of that in his writing, where he goes back to give some backstory, for the good guys and the bad guys both. And I just kind of I wanted the feeling that most of the zombie genre is the zombies show up and nobody has any idea what they're dealing with, and it's all new to everybody. Well, I wanted my characters to, okay, so zombies have been around and they've basically been a nuisance for 10 years. People they kind of starting to learn how to deal with them, and they're getting complacent about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, here they are. And, it's everybody knows how to deal with them. They learned how to deal with them in school, but it's never been a big problem. And, until the massive outbreak comes, and then it's just overwhelms all the systems that have been put in place.
Yeah. I thought that was a cool way to do it. Like, people are just aware of them and used to them being around, but I thought that was neat.
So, I know in my book, I wrote a lot of profanity in there. I kind of wrote my characters the way that me and my friends talk when we're away from our families, and we don't have to worry about offending anybody. You ever had anything, not maybe just in my book or in anybody else's that you've read, where you're reading something and you think to yourself, oh my God, do I really have to say this shit out loud?
But fucking the zombie with the, duct taping them. And, yeah, that was good. That took me, no lie, probably 20 minutes to do that little paragraph, because I kept cracking up during the whole thing, and we should probably bleep that out. Sorry about that. I shouldn't have. Yeah. Anyway, there's been another book I actually had to pass on after I had accepted to do it. I was about three or four chapters into kind of the prep work on it, and there was a scene. There's some stuff that I will not really say or narrate. It was more like pedophilia type stuff, and I was done with that. But I'll rip the guts out of something. I'll pretty much describe anything. I'll swear as much as possible. My wife and I, when the kids are asleep, the F word's about as fluid as the and word. So it's not new. It's difficult to get my parents to listen to some of the stuff I've done because of that, because they'll get, well, you don't have to swear so much. It's like, well, the guy wrote it like that. It's not my fault. So, I don't really have any qualms with stuff like that. I've done a couple of lit RPG narrations that were kind of harem based, where you have like one main character who has 5 women, and then every couple of chapters there's like a sex scene that you get to narrate. So that's interesting. It was interesting the first couple of times, but no, I really don't have any limits except for stuff with kids like that. So
I would be interested in seeing some outtakes from or hearing some outtake recordings from some of my stuff.
You probably won't be able to hear it over the laughing. Some of it's
well, I think when you sent me your audition recording, I think there was a line you said, and then right at the end, as you cut the mic out there, you started laughing at the end.
You could hear it? Shoot, sorry.
I only heard about a half a second, but I could tell you started laughing. I can't remember what line it was, but
yeah, it was good.
So, do you work on more than one book at a time, or do you prep and read one book straight through and then finish it and start the next one? Or
I've done both. It's difficult to do 2 at once, and I only had that happen because earlier this year, when everything kind of shut down and everything, I had a schedule built out, but it got kind of blown up with that. So there was a point in time where I was doing 2 different books at once. I'd do one in the morning, and then I'd go to my office for 4 or 5 hours, and I come home at night, and I do the other one at night. And I don't want to say I wouldn't do it again. It was a little bit difficult to kind of keep all the storylines straight.
oh, gotcha.
Generally, I'm recording one book and I'm reading off at night or whatever. I'm reading the next one I'm doing so I can kind of get an idea on where it's going. Earlier on, I would just I had a basic idea of the outline of the book, but I wouldn't really read ahead. I would just read it as I was narrating it, and that didn't work out too well. So now I read the whole entire book up front. I make sure that if it's a series, that I know which characters are dying down the road or may not be dying or carry forward through into the next part of the series, so that I don't mess up their character going forward. But yeah, it's tough to do more than one at a time, I've found, but I'm generally reading one while I'm recording the other one, which I don't know if you're aware of this, but for every hour of finished product that you hear, it takes me like 2 to 3 hours to actually record it all, because I make tons of mistakes, and I'll listen back. I try to go like 20 or 30 seconds at a time, then I'll listen back to it to make sure it's, if it sounds okay, and I'm usually redoing some dialogue or something like that during there. So it takes about 2 to 3 hours to record 1 hour worth of product, and then you have to go back through and kind of edit out all the loud breaths, and the microphone picks up the mouse farting down the hall. It's so sensitive, so you have to kind of go back through and edit out all the little clicks, and it can be a pain in the neck. But
I've read that it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 hours for and by the time you're completely done, anywhere from
Yeah.
5 hours work per every hour.
Right. It takes a while. So I started outsourcing a lot of the editing though, because I would, like you just said, and I would already record it for 2 hours and spend 2 more or 3 more hours editing it. So I just outsource that now. I have a guy I've been working with for a while who I send all my raw audio to, and he gets to hear all my nasty mouth clicks and swallows and burps, and he gets all that stuff out of it. I don't have to listen to it, and then I run it through a mastering software process that kind of makes it all even, and kind of gets it within Audible's specifications. So it sounds way different when you first record it versus when it's finished. So
Well, After Z is almost 12 hours long, so you had what, 70 or 80 hours wrapped up in that by the time it was
yeah, it's about right.
ready for a purchaser to listen to, huh?
Yep. Which is I like to see when people are giving good reviews, because earlier on when I would put a book out, and I only have like 22 out right now. I've been doing the audiobook narration for about 15 to 18 months now, roughly. But you go back to older reviews. It's weird. I'm a narrator. I have a stuttering problem. If you haven't noticed that during our back and forth here, but go back to some of the old reviews, and you put all this effort into it, all this work into it, and like one of the first reviews I got was Matthew Crowe is a horrible, emotionless narrator. And I've been in sales for 25 years, so that the rejection didn't bother me, but I was like, wow, that was rude. But they're right. So I took some classes, and I hired a couple of audiobook coaches who've been doing it for a long time, and I try to emulate a couple of other narrators that I really enjoy listening to, like R.C. Bray. I recently started listening to Ray Porter. He's really good. He's the guy that does the dark side voice in the DC comics.
Yeah, he does almost all of Jonathan Mayberry stuff too.
I think so. Yeah. So a few of those guys, and I've kind of learned a lot just by their delivery. I'm not saying I'm gonna be as good or as talented as Darcy Bray is down the road, but his delivery is different than a lot of other people that you listen to. So a long time ago, when I first started listening to audiobooks, I actually grabbed a couple of his. I didn't like the way he sounded, so I'd go into different books. And then as I started doing it, I went back and listened again. I was like, actually, the way he's doing this makes a lot more sense than a lot of the other places, or a lot of the other narrators that I've listened to. So I've listened to probably 20 books he's done just in the last year, just so I can kind of get my, I think it's helped with my pacing a lot. And I think it's helped with my delivery, but it's just practice. The more you practice, the more you do it, the better you get. So,
I would have never considered having a acting coach for doing what you do, but I
didn't either. But someone recommended that, like, you're actually acting out characters and people can't see you. So you have to do it, you can't just, Bobby said, blah, 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 blah. You have to actually say, Bobby said, blah, 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 to make it sound good, So that was a bad example, but you get the idea.
Yeah. The biggest example of the difference between deliveries that I can think of is the World War Z book. Book, with you got the one version with the full cast, but before that one came out, there was the first audiobook version of that came out with it was a single narrator. He didn't do voices. He just read the book like he was reading it.
Yeah.
And
that's what I thought it was at first too. That's how I did the first couple of books, and so I'm probably going to fix those for that guy in next year or two. So
I'm about 3/4 of the way through the second book, the follow-up for After Z, and I'm actually when I'm writing the dialogue, I'm thinking in my head their dialogue in the voices that you did for them in the first book. So,
oh, that's cool.
So
neat.
It's kind of helping.
Helping or hurting?
Kind of helping me pace the dialogue a little better, knowing what to sound like out loud. Because I'm I like to read, but being my full-time job is a truck driver, so I
Yeah.
consume 99% of my reading through audiobooks. So I'm constantly thinking, how's this going to sound?
Yeah, exactly. I do that now too. In fact, when I'm reading books, like to prepare for the next one I'm doing, it's all the time I'm like, man, I wish this was already in audio so I didn't have to read it.
Do
So
you do you actually read paper book, like read for pleasure anymore, or do you get enough reading done in the studio?
I do because I'm always looking, like, not always. A couple times a week, I'll spend about an hour going through all the top 100 apocalypse books or the top 100, whatever genre on Amazon. Then I'll reach out to a couple authors and based on that. But a lot of times I'll find one that I think is interesting and I'll see if they have an audiobook. So you click the button and they do. So I was like, oh, I'm ready to read the book anyway. I read the Greenfields series by Adrian Lecter about a year ago.
Mhm.
It's 14 or 15 book zombie series. Like it's military, but it's got a female character lead. I think it's really good. She's a really good author, but I tend to probably get through like one book a month that I'll read, and then the rest of it's all audio stuff. Like I started listening to, you were talking about a cast of characters a while ago. I was listening to the Dune audiobook. It's got Simon Vance narrating, but then like 8 or 9 other people in it too. And I just found it too distracting. I couldn't focus on the story. And I love that book. I've read that book probably a dozen times since I was probably 10 or 12. So I just find it distracting when it's more than one person, but maybe down the road that'll be different. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it can be distracting. You get back and forth between
Right.
dialogue. Your immediate dialogue is going back and forth. If there's
Right.
different chapters read by different people, I don't find that's kind of a different thing. But
It's hard to keep track of. So you had mentioned earlier that you used to watch the prepper shows on TV. Do you have a plan yourself? Do you have a bunker in the backyard? Do you have?
I have a plan. I just don't have.
Does this cost you?
I don't have the necessary funds to fully
Right.
to fully
Right.
my plan. So we keep a little extra food and a few extra cases of water at the house, and
We're toilet paper hoarders now that we couldn't find any earlier in the year. So
yeah.
we have enough TP in the basement now for I think 12 months. We figured out. So yeah. Same with us. We have a bunch of different, the dried, freeze-dried food downstairs in the basement and stuff like that. So, but again, it's just stuff I picked up from reading all these different types of books. So,
Yeah, I've gotten a little more serious about, trying to have a backup supply of some necessities since I started writing it, but nowhere near what the character in After Z was was able to.
Yeah, right.
But if you have $1 billion, you can prep for it properly. So
Right. If you were to give advice to somebody who was going to start out on their journey into becoming an author, what would be the first couple of steps you would advise them to do?
Well, the first thing I did was I started making notes. I kind of had a storyline in my head. Nowhere near a complete plot, but I just kind of started collecting notes, made voice notes to myself, or used Memo Pad on my phone. And once I had probably 10 pages of notes written down, I thought maybe I had enough to start and actually form a story around. And the second thing is don't try to copy and make the same kind of story that you've seen before. What I did was I kind of wanted to write a book that had aspects of the story that I hadn't read before. Some behind the scenes, how the virus was created, how the characters prepared themselves for the zombies, or how the
Right.
world was actually kind of prepared for it, but not really in the end. But everybody thought they knew how they would handle it. And then make sure you don't delete the edited copy before you start the publication.
A good one.
That was the biggest roadblock that I ran into was
Mm.
that mistake there.
As a reader, I would suggest to people, if they ever ask me, like, hey, what should I do for my book? As a reader, I would suggest being as accurate as possible. So, for example, there was a book I was reading a while ago. It was good. I was about halfway through it, and they introduced a new character. And there have been a few odd things that had happened before, like a couple of descriptions that I knew weren't really that accurate. But when there was a lady discussing with a special operations soldier, previous spec ops guy, she said, "You better get." He said to her, "We're going to go get our fighting suits on, and we'll meet." Blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, done with that one. Fighting suits. I mean, come on. It's little things like that. Like the details matter. So
Actually heard that term in more than one book by more than one author. I'm not sure.
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
Anyway,
If I don't know the details on something, I'll either spend an hour reading about it, or I
exactly.
will make it really vague. So
Mhm.
make the description kind of vague, so to get
Right.
the main idea past. I got a lot of military experience myself, but I don't need to hear every single spec of every single weapon, and
Right.
every single time the hero pulls his weapon out. I don't need to hear how long it is, how heavy it is, how well it fits in his hand, the muzzle.
Like type it is.
and-
Right. Yeah. So you have to find a happy medium of
Yeah.
not enough information and then too much, and then get there in the center. So
Right. And I was just a run-of-the-mill soldier. I wasn't in spec ops or anything, so I don't have that in-depth knowledge, and for the most part, I find it's a lot of extra detail that kind of just fills pages at some point, I think.
Mhm.
But if it's relevant to what's going on in the storyline, I'll throw out some specifics. Like the one point in After Z where there's a bad guy charging one of the characters, and he runs face first into the silencer that's attached to the end of his gun barrel.
Yeah.
Then I put in the length of the silencer, and that's the only
Yeah,
thing about the silencer.
relevant right there.
Rolls into the guy's head before he shoots. But
Right.
well, all right. Well, thanks for taking the time here.
Yeah, this is cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.